Ametulia kama mawimbi ya bahari, tabasamu lake linapuliza kama upepo wa mbali, njia zake zinang'aa kama nyota angani. Nitasimama kwa moyo wangu na kumuita wangu. Your love's a rhythm I can't ignore, beating softly, knocking at my core. Every step you take leaves me in awe. Like the moon you guide me to your shore. Mahaba yetu hayashindwi na upepo, twacheza pamoja kama wimbo wa milele. Ni wewe peke moyo wangu.
Hello. Karibu sana. Welcome. We are here yet again. We have kicked off. Those who are joining us for the first time, we always have love music to warm our souls, because we're always talking about loving our customers. We're always talking about loving our staff. We're always talking about loving life. We always talk about love. So love must reign. We must lead by example. We must be in love all the time. And today we want to talk about loving ourselves. What better way to spend Monday lunchtime than talking about such important things? So welcome those who've not been here before. We do this every third Monday of the month. So monthly. If you've missed all the rest, please go to our YouTube channel. Been here before all the other webinars we have had. And if you are a late luncher, you can add lunch from those other ones. But what's today's lunch about? What are we talking about? Why is it important for us to talk about this? And on a day like today, for those in the +254, today is a day when we don't feel like ourselves. There's so much going on. There's so much happening in the nation. We are feeling all types of ways, all sorts of ways. And so today it's important for us to talk about being holistically well and just talk about how we are feeling. And yeah, Modoni is saying the music was therapeutic. Indeed. Paris loved the music. Lucy is happy to be here. Oh, thank you, Mine. I look lovely just for you. So let's jump into our agenda for today. This is our agenda for today. What do we want to do? What do we want to talk about? What do we want to unpack? We want to talk about wellness. We want to talk about the human experience. We want to talk about customer experience and employee experience through this lens, because we're always talking about CX, we always talk about EX. What about the human experience? Because we are human beings providing these experiences. We are not far removed from feelings and from emotions. We can't put them aside. How do we succeed? How make sure this goes well? How do we look after ourselves in the space of the crazy things that are happening out here? And you and I know that looking after customers and looking after internal customers and external customers is quite a thing. So today we want to talk about how to do this and look after ourselves as well. Indeed. This is our agenda. This is what we are talking about today. And we have none other than the very dynamic is a dynamo, actually. Let me use the right vocabulary. Dynamo. We have a dynamo in the house in the name of Eddie Kimani. To introduce Eddie gives me such pleasure. What? This is the highlight of my whole afternoon, just to let you know about Eddie. Eddie is a very creative human being. You know, creativity, you know those memes where people are saying when God was adding, when he was adding for creativity for Eddie, he put a whole tank, not even a bucket of water, like the whole roto tank. He just poured like this. Very creative artist, does a lot with his hands, does a lot in the space of making places beautiful. Please go to his pages and look at that. Eddie is also very passionate about rallying. This is his passion, about rallying, making this sport just come alive and have professionalism. So he's into that as well. Knock on his door, all ye rallying enthusiasts. Eddie is passionate as well about the boy child, about men, about having men be in their rightful places, speak up in the rightful way, own their spaces. And so he speaks into that. He speaks into if you have anywhere you want somebody to come and empower and uplift men, please talk to Eddie. As you can see, I did a whole scroll to keep on talking about Eddie. Eddie's a great speaker, a great thespian. He graces our stages. He's in the media as well. I told you it's a whole basket full of things. But why Eddie is here today and the hat that he's wearing today is not the MC hat, not the creative hat, not the brotherhood hat, not the media hat, not the thespian hat. He's wearing the hat of being a mental health advocate. He's wearing the hat of being somebody who champions for mental wellness, mental health, causing us to live holistically mentally. Because if we don't do that from the top, it's never going to happen. And so he is an activist. You know, people talk about activists as if activists man, the mano for mental wellness. And so to kick us off on this mandamano because we must protest for ourselves. We must stand up for ourselves. We must advocate for ourselves. We must take the right stand audibly. Is Eddie Kimani. Drum rolls, everybody. A very warm welcome to Eddie. The floor is yours. The stage is yours. The lectern is yours. The podium is whatever you want. What do you want, Eddie? The mic. Let me hand over the mic. The mic is yours, Eddie. Take it away. Take it away.
Just the microphone. That's all I need. Thank you so much, Caroline, for that amazing introduction. Really appreciate it. And I'll just jump right into it. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for being here this afternoon. Now, I'd like to start with a very simple thought. Some of the most exhausted people today are not the ones who have stopped functioning. They're the ones who are still showing up every day. They're still replying to emails. They're still attending meetings. They're still serving customers. They're still leading teams. They're still smiling professionally. They're still delivering results. But internally, they are tired. And I think that reality connects very deeply with our theme here this afternoon, Beyond CX and EX, the human experience, building a mental health muscle for service excellence. Because when organizations talk about customer experience and employee experience, we often focus on systems, right? Performance, professionalism, communications, targets, leadership, and also productivity. And all those things, they do matter a lot. But underneath every customer interaction, every email, every target that you have to meet, every meeting and every workplace that you have to be at, there's a human being carrying pressure, a human being managing emotions, a human being trying to balance performance, survival, responsibility, and well-being, all this at the same time. And one of the biggest mistakes some workplaces make is that assuming that because somebody is functioning, they must be okay, right? But you see, functioning and being okay are not always the same thing. There's some of us serving customers while emotionally exhausted. There are leaders motivating teams while privately they are burnt out. There are professionals delivering excellent work while silently running on empty. And that is why today I do not want to just conversate about CX and EX. I want us to talk about the human experience. My conversation will be led by that, the human experience. Because service excellence without emotional wellness eventually becomes emotional acting. It becomes wearing a mask. And emotional acting is exhausting. Utachoka. So today we are going to have an honest conversation about emotional resilience, burnout, boundaries, mental health, and how we continue serving people without losing ourselves in the process. And towards the end of the session, we will also have some time for questions and answers, and we can discuss together. But before I continue, I'd like to appreciate Life Skills Consulting for creating space for this very important conversation. And I thank all of you for taking time to be part of this conversation here today. Now, one thing I've realized over the years is that serving people is emotional labor, no matter what industry you're in. Whether somebody works in leadership, customer service, healthcare, HR, education, sales, what other space, entrepreneurship or management, the work is never purely technical. It's also emotional. And honestly, this topic is personal for me because, like, some of you might know this, some might not know, but my first job was in customer service back in the late 90s at a company called MultiChoice Kenya. Some of you may know it. When we were just starting up operations here in Kenya. So when I speak about this very important conversation around customer experience, human experience, I'm speaking from a lived experience point of view, not just theory. I remember dealing with frustrated, impatient, and overwhelmed customers. And one thing that I learned very early during that time is that customer service is rarely just about solving problems. Most of the times it's about managing emotions, both the customer emotions and your own. But behind all this, every complaint, there is always an emotional like frustration, stress, disappointment. There's a need for urgency. There is fear, right? And when people are constantly exposed to emotional pressure without enough emotional recovery, then it eventually begins affecting them psychologically. And that is why emotional resilience matters so much. And that's why it is so important. But emotional resilience is often misunderstood. Many of us think resilience means pretending to be okay or endlessly pushing through exhaustion. Now, that is not resilience. That is living in survival mode. Real emotional resilience is the ability to recover without losing yourself in the process. That's where the real emotion resilience is. Because as human beings, we are not machines. We are not. And nobody can continuously pour emotionally from an empty place. We've had this saying, you cannot give from an empty cup. I'm sure you've heard that. Nobody can continuously give or pour emotionally from an empty place forever and still expect healthy performance. No. Empathy, healthy relationships and excellence. You cannot get it and to remain sustainable. Nobody can do that. And I think one of the biggest mistakes in some workspaces they make is rewarding emotional suppression. The strong employee becomes the one who never complains and silently absorbs pressure. But silence is not always strength. Sometimes silence is survival. So I'd like to challenge you where you are right now to start this session by reflecting honestly on this question. What version of yourself are you bringing to the spaces that you serve from every day? Just reflect on that. You can write it down. What version of yourself are you bringing into the spaces you serve from every day? Because service excellence is not only technical, it's emotional. Emotional suppression is not resilience. Ignoring your emotions is not resilience. And when you decide to recover, recovery is not weakness. It is not. And I'll tell you more about that. If we want healthier customer experiences and healthier workplaces, then we must become healthier human beings ourselves. That would be a good starting point. And honestly, one of the reasons emotional resilience has become so important today is because many people, many of us, are carrying invisible emotional burdens and baggage and weight that nobody talks about openly. And I'd like to point out that my attention now goes to the young adults, not only the unemployed young adults, but also young professionals who are trying to survive adulthood while mentally they are overwhelmed. I think one of the biggest silent mental health crises we have amongst our young adults today is hopelessness. And hopelessness does not only exist among people without jobs. There are young people out there with careers. They have responsibilities, salaries, and titles who still feel emotionally lost, anxious, overwhelmed, and disconnected from themselves. There are young professionals who have worked hard to build careers, but they still feel uncertain about life. I'm sure they're there. Some of us are here. People carrying financial pressure, young adults having family responsibilities and emotional exhaustion while trying to appear stable professionally. And to be very honest, social media has made this even very hard because you see, everybody online looks very confident, right? They look successful, they've reached wamefika, they look productive, yeah? Hmm? They look certain about where their life is, where their life is going. Meanwhile, privately, many of us are anxious, emotionally tired, financially pressured, and they're quietly afraid that they are falling behind in life. And slowly, hopelessness begins attacking their identity. People stop saying things like, I'm struggling right now. And then what they now start talking about is, maybe I'm the problem. That shift is very dangerous because once struggle becomes your identity, we begin disconnecting emotionally from hope. We stop believing things can improve. And sometimes we begin rather, surviving life instead of participating in it fully. I think one of these things, you know, workplaces, leaders, and families need to understand is this one thing, that young professionals are carrying silent emotional pressure every day. Some are supporting families while barely holding themselves together emotionally. Some are battling anxiety while trying to remain productive. Some are emotionally isolated, even though they are constantly surrounded by people. And many people, young adults, they're suffering silently because they think adulthood means carrying everything alone. And why I talk about young adults is because it's one of the questions that Caroline shared with me. And I've combined it as part of this talk as I talk on all these other topics that I'll bring up and I'll share with you. Now, human beings are not designed to carry pressure endlessly without support. And that's why I believe one of the biggest things young adults today need is to get permission to be human. Not permission to avoid responsibility, but permission to acknowledge that pressure has an emotional impact. At the same time, I think mental health conversations must remain balanced and very honest because pain is real. We all know that. Pressure is real. And emotional exhaustion is also real. But we must also be very careful not to become passive inside these struggles that we go through. We must be very careful. We cannot be passive inside these struggles. We cannot. Healing requires participation. Growth still requires discipline. And sometimes the breakthrough that people are waiting for is hidden in being consistent, not being motivated as such. You can listen to all motivational talks out there, but sometimes the breakthrough that you are waiting for is hidden inside being consistent. Consistent. Now, there are things that nobody can do for us. Nobody can build our routines. Nobody can manage our finances for us wholesomely. We need to do these things ourselves. Nobody can force us to grow or continuously rescue us from ourselves. Nobody. Sometimes progress looks very ordinary, normal, kawaida. It looks like trying again while you're still uncertain, when you're still unsure. It looks like learning just one more skill, applying yourself one more time, remaining teachable, and continuing to show up even when progress feels slow. And I think many young adults are waiting to feel ready before they move. But confidence is usually, or rather, it's usually built through movement, not before movement. I'll say it again. Confidence is usually built through movement, being active, not before movement. So, yes, protect your mental health. Ask for help. And by the way, for me, the strongest person in any room is the one who reaches out for help. Because tell me why. If I break my hand right now here and I call out for help, I will get that help immediately, so long as I have people around here. But why is it that if I have a mental breakdown, a mental health issue, it is so difficult to ask for help? And sometimes, even if you ask for that help, you will not get it because people either do not want to be involved with what you're going through. That's how bad it is. And both of them, physical health and mental health, are the same thing. They're two similar things. They're similar. So yes, please, let's protect our mental wellness and our health. Let's ask for help, for support. Let's reach out. Let's acknowledge our struggles, but also keep building. Let's keep learning. Let's keep participating in our own futures, even when life feels or seems difficult. Because hopelessness becomes dangerous when it convinces you to stop investing in yourself completely. Hopelessness can make you do that. And if there's one thing that I hope you can carry from this, at this juncture, is the understanding that your worth is bigger than your productivity. It's bigger than your job title or how quickly seems to be moving for you. It's much more bigger. At the same time, healing and growth will still require intentional and deliberate effort. It will need and require discipline. It will need consistency, especially consistency. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for yourself is just to simply refuse to quietly give up on yourself. It's the best thing you can ever do for yourself. That brings me to a very major issue affecting workspaces today: burnout. And unfortunately, burnout has become so normalized that many of us wear exhaustion almost like a badge of honor. You kuona kwa mabega huko. Burnout is actually one of the misunderstood realities in modern work culture, because many of us think burnout simply means you're tired. But burnout goes much more deeper, my friends. than exhaustion. It goes much more deeper. Burnout is when rest no longer feels restorative. It's when you sleep, but you still wake up exhausted. Umechoka tu, but you slept. Burnout is when you take that leave, but mentally you're still drained. Umetoka leave, you need another leave. The work that you loved starts to become emotionally heavy. That's where burnout happens. When rest no longer feels restorative, when you sleep, but you still wake up tired. When you take that leave, but you come back to work still tired, mentally drained. When work that you loved, that you cared about, suddenly becomes emotionally heavy for you to carry. And one dangerous thing about burnout is that it rarely happens suddenly. Most people do not completely collapse overnight. Burnout happens and builds over time, through prolonged stress, through emotional overload, through lack of recovery, which is very crucial, through unresolved pressure, through poor boundaries, and we'll talk about that also, and constantly operating in survival mode. So as you may be aware, you know, many of us high performing professionals rather, we perform on adrenaline without even realizing it. Externally, we look productive, hawa ni wale wa kujituma, eh? They are dependable, yeah? They are capable, they continue attending meetings and you continue emails and replying, they are delivering results and those targets and showing up for those responsibilities that they have. But internally, they are empty. Internally, they are emotionally exhausted. I also think one of the biggest problems in modern workspaces and modern work culture is that overworking has become glorified. People are praised for always being available, always sacrificing, and constantly pushing through exhaustion. Burnout is sometimes worn almost like it's a proof of importance. You wear it on your chest like a commitment, and wearing it like a badge of honor. That's how some of our work culture spaces are, our modern work culture. But you know what? Eventually, the body keeps the what? The score. And honestly, not every version of keep going is healthy. Not all of them. Sometimes we are not persevering. Sometimes we are abandoning ourselves. Many professionals ignore exhaustion because they believe strength means enduring everything silently. Unapambana nayo. That's how we've been wired to think. We believe resting means weakness, that when I rest, it is shameful. Sometimes you even doubt yourself. I don't know if you've ever felt this. You're supposed to be resting, but you begin to doubt yourself as if you're not supposed to be doing that. But I guess it's also how we've been programmed or wired, and understanding what looking or working or staying busy looks like, you know? We believe resting means weakness. Asking for help means failure. That's what we believe. And slowing down means you're falling behind. But healthy resilience is not endless endurance. Healthy resilience includes recovery. It includes emotional awareness, honesty, support. It includes healthy boundaries. And sometimes strength looks like it's recognizing that you are overwhelmed before your body forces you to stop completely. This is where the body tells you, hold my drink, or hold your favorite beverage. Wacha nikushow. And eventually burnout begins to affect everything around you. It affects customer experience because emotionally exhausted people, you struggle to sustain empathy and patience. It affects leadership and managerial, capacity. A lot of leaders, we struggle to lead well. It affects workplace culture because emotional overload eventually spreads into communication. It spreads into your relationships. And it also spreads into your team dynamics. And it's like water, by the way. Water will always find its way. And that pain, that burnout, it will leak and it will have to find its way and it will leak like water. It will leak into the tone of your voice. It will leak into your patience. It will leak into your leadership and management style. And also your customer interactions. And many of us do not realize that how emotional depleting or depleted we have become until our relationships, our health, our mental health, and our physical health, motivation, or even performance begins to suffer. I'd like everyone to honestly ask yourself this question at this juncture. What version of yourself have you normalized? Just ask yourself. You can write it down. What version of yourself have you normalized? Have you normalized exhaustion so much that rest now feels uncomfortable? Have you normalized anxiety so deeply that peace feels unfamiliar? It feels unrecognizable. Haujui peace ama amani. You don't even know when you're having peace because you've normalized exhaustion. Have you become so used to survival mode that you no longer remember what it feels like to actually live well? Because many people, many of us, we wait for burnout to force change instead of choosing change early, which you can very deliberately. And this is the thing, if you do not intentionally and deliberately create space for recovery, your body will eventually create it for you. Sometimes through illness, sometimes through emotional collapse, or sometimes complete disengagement. Now, this conversation is not just about productivity, it's more about sustainability. Your life cannot permanently operate like an emergency. No. At some point, you must decide that your mental health and your wellness deserve to be taken care of, not just to be rescued. Many of us, we take care and better care of our mobile phones, of our cars, our careers, than we do of our emotional well-being. Yeah. And I really want to encourage everyone to stop wearing burnout as a badge of honor. Stop wearing burnout as proof that you're available, rather that you're valuable. Seeking help, and by the way, even seeking help or getting therapy does not mean you have to be sick to go and see a therapist or mentally ill to go and see a therapist. No, you don't. The same way you take your car for service, it does not mean there's a problem with your car. It doesn't mean there's a problem. You just want it to be checked. It's the same way you can sit with a therapist and have a conversation. They've been trained to have that conversation, to understand how our minds work. They've been trained, they understand our minds. The same way that mechanic, the same way that guy or that lady understands cars. He or she knows where to touch, where to see, where are the problems, just indicators here and there. I can see diagnostic tests. I really want to encourage everyone. Please do not wear burnout as proof of how valuable you are or as a badge of honor. Because success that destroys your mental health eventually becomes very expensive. And there's one thing I hope people can carry from this session. It is an understanding that burnout is not weakness. Burnout is often the result of prolonged emotional overload without recovery. Sustainable success requires healthy boundaries, emotional awareness, and intentional life. To have sustainable success, it needs healthy boundaries, emotional awareness, and intentional recovery, and being very deliberate about it. And ultimately, the goal is not to simply keep going at all costs, but to build a life where you can continue growing, where you can continue leading and succeeding without slowly losing yourself in the process. Now, I have another question for you for this conversation. How much is too much? How much is too much? How do we continue caring for customers, teams, stakeholders, and responsibility without emotionally destroying ourselves? How do we do that in the process? How much is too much? How much is too much? I think one of the hardest things for any professional, especially those of us in leadership, managerial positions, customer service, and emotionally demanding environments, is learning where responsibility ends and when the self-destruction begins. Many caring and hardworking people struggle with boundaries, not because we are weak, no, but because we genuinely care deeply about people and outcomes, isn't it? We care about customers, isn't it? We care about teams, we care about performance, and keeping things running smoothly. We care about that. Over time, many professionals then begin measuring their value by how much pressure they can carry or absorb without breaking. Ndio, kujituma sio vibaya. Endelea kujituma. But how much is too much? Eventually, the mind and the body begin to resist what the soul, the inner you, has been tolerating silently. I remember speaking to somebody in customer care recently, and she told me she one day realized she had become emotionally numb. Emotionally numb. Customers would complain, people would raise their voices, and she stopped feeling anything. And she wasn't angry anymore. She was just empty. And I honestly think many of us quietly relate to that, isn't it? Because when emotional pressure becomes constant, people do not always collapse dramatically. Sometimes we simply shut down emotionally. That department is shut down, become detached, emotionally unavailable, and disconnected from work that we once cared about. And many organizations, some misunderstand this to some point. They call it poor attitude or lack of commitment, when in reality, that person has simply exceeded their emotional capacity far too long without recovery or any kind of support. And that's why boundaries matter. And I think many professionals struggle with boundaries because we confuse boundaries with selfishness. We feel guilty when we rest. You feel ashamed when somebody finds you resting, when you're supposed to be resting. We feel guilty saying no. We feel guilty disconnecting from work and guilty for asking for help. Asking for help. But boundaries are not selfish, by the way. Boundaries are sustainability. No human being can absorb emotional pressure endlessly without consequences. There will be consequences. Eventually, emotional overload affects how you think, how you communicate, how you lead, how you manage, and how you function. This is where moral distress starts to happen, when people are forced to continuously operate beyond their emotional or psychological limits for too long. And honestly, many organizations underestimate the emotional cost of customer-facing roles. People handling customers absorb frustration. You absorb complaints. You absorb pressure, urgency, and conflict every single day. Even when people appear calm externally, that emotional exposure accumulates internally over time. It builds up, it festers, and it builds up. And that's why healthy boundaries are necessary and not optional. Healthy boundaries look like taking leave seriously, disconnecting mentally from work after hours, escalating abusive situations instead of silently absorbing emotional damage, or simply learning to say, I need help, I need support, before you get to that breaking point. So, healthy boundaries, taking that leave seriously, escalating abusive situations, instead of cushioning all that damage emotionally, or simply learning how to say, I need support. One thing I've personally learned is that you cannot continuously save environments that are continuously destroying you. I'll say it again. You cannot continuously save environments that are continuously destroying you. At some point, recovery matters. Sustainability matters. Your humanity matters. Because burnout does not only affect individuals, it affects leadership. It affects how you communicate. It affects how you work as a team. It affects empathy. It affects customer experience. And overall, it affects the workplace culture. And I'd like you to think about this. What boundaries are you afraid to create because you fear disappointing people? Hmm? What boundaries are you afraid to make or create because you fear making people unhappy? Because many of us, we need to understand that being available all the time is not the same thing as being valuable. It is not. It doesn't put that badge on you. You do not become more worthy by continuously sacrificing your mental well-being. I'd like you to know that it is the understanding that healthy boundaries are not selfish. They are necessary. Healthy boundaries are not selfish. They are unnecessary. It eventually affects every part of, let's say, leadership and even service excellence. And ultimately, the goal is not to become emotionally unavailable. The goal to be emotionally sustainable so that success does not come at the cost of your own well-being. I'll say it again. Ultimately, your end game, your goal is not to become emotionally unavailable, but to be emotionally valuable. So before I close, I'd like to briefly touch on something that is often overlooked in conversations about burnout and emotional resilience, and this is gratitude. It might sound misplaced in this conversation, but hear me out. Just hear me out. I do not even mean fake positivity or pretending that life is perfect. No, I mean real gratitude. Real gratitude is not denying that there is pressure or there is stress. It's simply the ability to pause long enough to regain your perspective. Many professionals, we live in constant cycle of pressure. What is next? Huh? What deadline did I miss? Which deadline is coming? Allah, what? What needs my solving? You know that? And over time, you get so focused on what is missing that you forget what is still meaningful, what is still working, and how far that you've come. You tend to forget that very easily. And that is where gratitude becomes powerful. Gratitude does not remove pressure. It restores perspective. It reminds us that our lives are not just made of unfinished problems. So I'd like us to do something practical right now, virtually. I think Carol knows about this, yeah? So I'd like you to take your phone where you are and think of one person who positively has impacted your life or your career. Somebody who has supported you, has encouraged you, somebody who believed in you. And that person, Doesn't have to be in this call. Somebody maybe who's not even in the room you're in. If you're at work, somebody who's far away, a friend, husband or a wife, just somebody who helped you during a difficult time. Send them a simple message of appreciation right now. Nothing complicated on your WhatsApp or SMS. For example, just tell them, right, um, I'm currently at this session online that has made me reflect on the people who have helped me and impact my life and my career. I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you. Simple message. I'm currently attending a session that made me reflect on somebody or people who have impacted my life and my career. I just want to say genuinely thank you. And I appreciate it. I'll give you some few seconds. Gratitude reconnects people. It softens relationships and reminds us that we were never meant to carry pressure all alone. That's what gratitude does. And sometime in the middle of stress or burnout and emotional exhaustion, one genuine moment of gratitude can become a powerful emotional reset for you. So I close now. I'd like to leave us with one simple thought. Maybe the real question workplaces should start asking is not how much more can people endure, but rather what helps people remain human while still performing. Again, I'd like us to see workspaces asking this question, or not asking this question, how much more can people endure? Don't ask that. Should be asking, rather, what helps people remain human while still performing well? Because service excellence is not only built through systems and targets. It is built through emotional, healthy human beings. Human beings who feel supported, psychologically safe, and valued, which is and beyond their productivity. And maybe true resilience is not becoming emotionless. It is not. True resilience, maybe, it is learning how to carry responsibility without losing yourself in the process. Because the goal is not simply to survive for work. No. The goal is to build lives and workplaces where people can succeed without slowly destroying themselves internally. I'll say it again. The goal is not to simply to survive work, to go to work so that you can go home. No, that's not the goal. The goal is to build lives and workplaces and spaces where human beings can succeed without destroying themselves internally. Thank you so much for your time,
Wow.
for your being here today. And again, thank you to Caroline and Life Skills. And more importantly, for the, the, the creation of a space, a safe space where we can have this conversation. Asante sana, and thank you very much for your attention.
Wow. I don't know what I'm feeling, Eddie. I don't know what I'm feeling. I feel rebuked. I feel challenged. I feel stretched. I feel like I have a new way of thinking. I feel like crying because I have received so many texts, Eddie. I've received so many texts right now from people in my life, and I'm like, what? You're saying beautiful things. People are saying beautiful things. It's restoring my soul. And
Asante.
when you ask about, it reminds me of, you know, but what does it profit a man to lose to gain the whole world and to lose you? That's exactly what you're telling us. Because where does responsibility start and self-destruction end? How much is too much? What is the cost of whatever we are chasing? When you look in the chat, everyone is saying, oh, this conversation was for me right now, right here, right now. I think you do need to come back because we don't even have time to ask you the questions that we wanted to ask you. And just practically telling us to do things and to care for ourselves and to ask, and that we are not weak. We are not
We're
weak
not.
to ask.
We're not. We're not.
Yeah.
The
It
strongest
is
person in
strength.
the room, Caroline,
Mm.
And I'll say
Mm,
this again, that for me,
mm,
the
mm,
strongest person, the strongest man, the strongest woman for me in a room is the one who
mm,
stands up and says,
mm,
I need
mm.
help.
I need
It
help.
starts from there because we can't do this alone. But we
Right,
still have work that we ourselves can are supposed to do.
right,
Nobody will help us to grow,
right,
or rather
right,
force us to grow.
right,
Nobody
right.
will come and hold your hand and tell you they've got solutions for you. It has to come from a
Mm,
point of intention, and
mm.
consistency is key because when you start a pattern of something, like everything else, bad or good, when you start a pattern of something,
Yes.
it depends on where your intentionality is. It's like that parable of the two wolves. If you have two
Mm,
wolves, there's a guy
mm.
who had two wolves,
Uh-huh.
and the one that he fed the most is the one that became the most fierce. So which wolf are you feeding?
Okay. Okay.
Is it the bad wolf or the good wolf?
Right. Which
So those
wolf are
that's
you feeding?
intentionality and being able
Mm,
to know what is at stake, especially to do with your well-being, your own
mm.
peace, your own self-care, again, boils down to you.
Boils down to you.
Yeah.
Right. I am thinking about how it starts with me because in as much as you're my friend Eddie, good people, Eddie is my friend. On top of all those things I told you is this. The most important title here is that Eddie is my friend, and it's important to have good friends. And in fact, today a friend
Thank
of
you.
mine, Rose, said
And
such a
you're a good
beautiful
friend.
thing about friendships in adulthood because you choose. So, Eddie, you're my friend, and I think it starts with all of us in this room that if somebody asks for help, we will not shame them. Because I am afraid to say, because I will look weak, I will look foolish, I will feel ashamed, I will be shamed. So I think we should just stop it. We should just stop it. Yeah.
It's good to stop, but awareness is more important. That
Hmm.
it can't be. We are all living in these communities that we call our workspaces, where we spend
Hmm.
70 to 80% of our times, of our days. So as much
Hmm.
as you also want to do this for yourself, it's also
Yes.
good that if we're living together and we are looking out for each other, then I will not shame you if you come to
Right.
me and you ask for help.
Right.
Because
Right.
if we all have the understanding how it is important when somebody reaches out for help, because I think also it stems from how the systems we grew up in as children. Maybe when you ask for help, maybe if you fall down, do you remember falling down and you try to ask for help and your classmates laugh at you?
Hmm.
So it becomes one of those things that we end up embracing with unknowingly, where you don't understand how important it is to respond to somebody's help. Of course, at your own capacity to ask for that assistance, and also
Right.
for you, how will you respond to it also matters. So we should
Hmm.
be cognizant of that also. But yeah,
Right.
it's again
Absolutely.
starts again with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Eddie, we could go on forever. We are coming to the end of our time. In fact, I need to politely, with customer service language, ask the team here if we could go over our time a little bit by 5 minutes or so. Usually we
sure.
finish on the dot, but I think there's so much coming through the comments. We've taken time to text each other. Eddie, where do we find this is not enough? First of all, we will beg your indulgence and call you back again to another online session. But where do we find you? We need to hear these things. We need to bring them home in our workplaces, in our communities, in our groups, in our book clubs, in our chama mamas, even in the barber shop. Eddie has a fantastic initiative about barber shops. And where do we find you? And please tell us just one thing we can do from here. I know on the chat there's been a lot of summaries about how to create these healthy boundaries. Where do we find you? Or I can see your contacts on the
Yeah.
chat.
So I've
And what do we do from here? Just one thing. What's our one big take home, Eddie?
yeah, just say that again. Say that again.
What's the one big thing you want us to do from today? What homework what do we do? We can't just leave here like this. Send us. We are ready. Give us the
Okay.
work to do.
One thing, especially because we are conversating this from a workplace environment, is that we need to just invest in more spaces and build spaces where people don't have to suffer silently. A safe space could be just that colleague next to you. Create that space for the two of you.
Right.
We don't have many of these safe spaces where people can come and ask for help. Because the first thing that comes to mind is that I will look like I'm weakling. And one of the challenges men faces when asking for help is that when you be judged and for being vulnerable, you'll be judged as a weakling. Let's not make vulnerability feel like weakness. It is not. It's actually our strength. All these emotions that we've been blessed with are supposed to be used. They're not supposed to be hidden. And they're supposed to communicate. The same way we have signposts and road signs to guide us to where we are going. Emotions are the same tools that we utilize. Unfortunately, we grew up without being fully equipped in knowing how to use these signs that are called emotions. So if we can create safe, build spaces where people don't have to suffer silently, we can start from there.
We can start from there.
Yeah.
We
And
can
also,
absolutely
I'll
start.
add one more point. Share your story, but share it with people who you trust and people who you say you are safe with. Sharing my story saved my life. Sharing my journey saved my life. I would not have done this if you asked me 10 years ago if I would have shared my story. But it has not only had an impact on me, but it has had an impact on people who are caged by their own, creation around themselves, that they don't deserve to be heard. They don't deserve to tell their stories. Stories power us. They empower us. And when you hear somebody's story, it'll empower you. So share it with somebody you trust, share it in a safe space, because you've built a safe space where nobody needs to feel ashamed. So
Right.
that's the kind of future I'm seeing.
The future is bright. Mbele
Very
iko sawa. We refuse emotional fatigue and emotional acting and emotional bondage and emotional
true.
depletion and emotional numbness and all those things you've said here, Eddie. We refuse them. The future is bright. We will share our stories. We'll create safe spaces. We will run with the things you have told us to. We usually have a WhatsApp platform, dear ones. If you want to join us on Mondays, we talk about employee and customer experience once a week. It's a Q&A. We'll put it in the chat. If you want to join in, please do. It is a safe space. As Eddie has talked about safe spaces, it's a psychologically safe space to ask questions. Nobody will wonder what kind of question are you asking. So Eddie, we are thankful. We have gratitude. You've told us about gratitude. We're really grateful.
Yes.
Yeah,
Treasure those moments that you remind somebody of what they've done. You have no idea. You've just transferred an emotion to somebody from where you're seated. Maybe
yeah,
somebody you have not spoken to in months or weeks or maybe even days. But the impact it has for both of you, you as a person who's appreciating and them receiving out of the
yes,
blue, the
yes.
impact, and that's the impact that we all need for each other when we are talking about gratitude and the things that we need to be
Right.
thankful for.
Amazing, amazing. Good people. I think even Emily has shared the WhatsApp platform on the chat here. I think this coming Monday we'll put aside our Q&A and just share what kind of messages came to you, what kind of messages did you send, what was the impact, so that we just don't leave this session like this. We leave it with high impact. Change starts with us. We must be the change we want to see. So we want to sign off this afternoon. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, as always, for being a
Thank
beautiful
you.
audience.
Asante.
Thank you for
Thank
sharing of your questions that Eddie has managed to answer, plus more. Eddie, what's your final word? And we call it a day. Final word, parting shots.
From
Talk to
me,
your people. Yes, from you.
be kind to yourselves.
Be kind to yourself.
Be
Be
kind to
kind
yourself.
to yourself.
There's, it's
All
it's a
right.
powerful thing,
Yes.
and being aware of that, it's powerful. Yes.
Yourself. With that, we sign off. We sign off from this session. Have a beautiful Monday. Have a beautiful week ahead. And let's meet at the next session. Thank you very much, Eddie. Be blessed. Be blessed,
Yes.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you for sharing and thank you for being here. Asante, have a beautiful day ahead. Have a beautiful afternoon. See you all.